The Silent has some of my favorite archetypes in both Spire 1 and 2. I love poisoning enemies and watching them melt, or, more relevant to today's video, creating infinite shivs and turning my foes into pincushions. So, I was overjoyed to find out that shivs got a buff in Spire 2 thanks to Knife Trap. This baby plays all of the shivs that you've played throughout the entire fight. Kind of, sort of. It pulls them from the exhaust pile, so it doesn't generate new shivs or anything like that. Doesn't do any exponential stuff. It's still really good. It deletes enemies, and it melts bosses. So, in this video, I'm going to go over the Shiv builds that I've been playing, including the core build-arounds, how I've been using them, and some additional supplementary cards plus relics to look out for. So first up, what is the core of a build? If you played Spire 1, the thing that might come to mind is accuracy. But so far, my best runs have actually been when I built around Knife Trap, both with and without accuracy. Accuracy is of course better if you can get both, but if I had to pick one, right now I'm leaning towards Knife Trap. And yes, this card is a little bit pricey at 2 energy, but it plays every shiv from the exhaust pile. In other words, again, every time you've shivved an enemy in the entire combat, never getting re-shivved. If you upgrade Knife Trap to Knife Trap Plus, you get Shiv Plus instead of regular shivs. You don't need this at the start of a run, but every single time I've gotten it by the end, I've won that run. And I've lost a couple of shiv runs where I did get accuracy. So anecdotally, Knife Trap, really strong. Also as a note, if in the early game you don't yet have Knife Trap and you're looking for something to kind of fill that place and delete enemies, grab Finisher. It does 6 damage per attack that's played that turn. Shivs are attacks, so think of this as plus 6 damage per shiv at the cost of 1 energy. It's probably not going to melt bosses, but it is pretty darn good at chunking elites and killing normal enemies outright. Then there's Accuracy, a 1-cost power that increases the damage of your shivs by either 4 or 6. This is of course a huge damage multiplier because the shiv base damage is 4, so this is doubling it. Now, if you have other buff cards available to you, this is going to be a little bit less impactful, i.e. if you have +1 strength, well, now you're not quite doubling, you're going from 5 to 9, but also 5 to 9, still a significant increase. So, accuracy is very good. Ideally, you want both Knife Trap and accuracy. My best runs have had both, but like I just mentioned, I've won more runs where I got Knife Trap but not accuracy than accuracy without Knife Trap. Next up, Shiv generation. One of my favorites is Cloak and Dagger. When upgraded, it gives 6 block and 2 shivs. Having some extra passive defenses is especially nice because it means I don't feel as pressured to play defensive cards, and the more time and more energy I can spend playing shivs, the more damage I'm going to do, and the bigger the Knife Trap is at the end. But Spire 2 adds some fun new options as well, like Hidden Daggers. This is a 0-cost shiv generator that also discards cards, which means you can discard statuses that enemies inflict, and I found that in Spire 2, more enemies put statuses into my deck than I remember from Spire 1. And you can take advantage of Sly, which is a new keyword that's the old silent effect of when this card would be discarded during your turn, it is instead played. Plus, since it's 0 cost, if you have some draw effects, you can play more cards in a turn. Just make sure you either play it last or discard cards that you weren't going to be using anyway. The other one that I like is Up My Sleeve. Basically, this is Blade Dance, but 2 cost the first time you play it, and it doesn't exhaust, which is really nice, because after you play it once, the cost goes down from 2 to 1, so now it's basically Blade Dance, but it doesn't exhaust. And if you have a really small deck, or a lot of draw, or you're just cycling through because it's a long fight, well, guess what? The next time you play it, it's 0 cost. Enjoy your infinite shivs. Of course, if you can't get those, Blade Dance, still really good. Infinite Blades, still good. It still generates shivs. And there's the new Leading Strike. Personally, I think Leading Strike is the worst shiv generator because it's just an attack that generates a shiv on top. But hey, it's a shiv generator. It's not terrible. Now, in addition to that, here's a few other cards to look out for. As a note, these are not the only cards to look out for. It's always hard to tell what the Spire's going to offer you. So I wanted to highlight a few things that interact directly with the build that I've found particularly helpful. The first of which is Afterimage. This card gives you block every time you play a card, so it's a good way to get passive defenses. And my general playstyle, which I'll talk about very shortly, is to try to focus on creating as many shivs as possible and spending as much time as possible doing damage, then unloading with Knife Trap. In terms of directly related shiv cards, there's also Phantom Blades and Fan of Knives. Phantom Blades is a Shiv power that significantly boosts your Shivs once per turn. It also lets you retain them, though that's of dubious use. A couple times I did get some use out of it, but most of the time it was just because it only gave the damage boost for one turn. It's not bad, but it's not one of my priorities. Same for Phantom Knives. It turns Shiv's AoE, which, say against Parasite Frog, really good. But against a single target boss, not as good. It's certainly nice to have. It sort of functions as a blade dance or as an up my sleeve. Because of the power you only play it once, it costs 2, it gives you some Shivs. Keep an eye out for it. In terms of non-Shiv cards entirely, there's Burst. This plays a skill twice. Well, guess what? Most of your Shiv generators are skills, so Burst is pretty good. Then there's Envenom, which inflicts 1 stack of poison every time you deal unblocked damage. Because of the number of hits from Shiv builds, this does accumulate pretty fast. And you can do some funny shenanigans if you also get Outbreak, though I found the whole Envenom into Shivs into Outbreak thing to be a little clunky, so maybe that's not the best idea. It worked once and never again. The last one I want to talk about, though, is Blade of Ink. This gives you escalating strength for each attack played within the turn. So, 2, 4, 6, 8, so on. This is very, very good with Shiv build because you're generating a lot of zero-cost cards and you're playing them consecutively. In fact, out of all of these cards I've put in the optional category, I'd say number 1 After Image, number 2 Blade of Ink. Similarly, there are a couple of relics to keep an eye out for. Specifically, anything that says when you play X attacks, because what are Shivs? Say it with me. Attacks. This means Kusarigama, Kunai, and Shuriken. With Shuriken being the best because Shivs get a lot of value from strength simply because of a number of hits. Another really good one is Charon's Ashes. Shivs exhaust after you play them, so it's more or less free plus 3 damage on the enemy. Again, not an exhaustive list of all the good relics. There's plenty of other good relics. Oh, and for defenses, Ornamental Fan, really good one as well. But those are the main ones that I'd look out for, and if you see them in a shop, absolutely pick them up. Next up, I'm going to go over a few gameplay tips and tricks that I've picked up along the way. Before I do though, a quick reminder that if you found the video helpful, be sure to leave a like. It helps out with the YouTube algorithm and means more people will see it. Also, get subscribed because I'm going to be making more build videos in Slave Spire 2. And hey, maybe comment down below what you want to see more of. Like, do you want to see the Necrobinder, or maybe the Regent, or are you a Defect fan, or you could be an Ironclad enjoyer. Either way, let me know. So what about some gameplay tips? First up, be open to opportunities early on. Even if I'm not specifically playing the Shiv archetype, I will very often take either Cloak and Dagger or Hidden Daggers if it's offered to me, because they're decent cards, especially in the early game. That said, if I'm offered Knife Trap or Accuracy, well, it's time to hard pivot to Shivs. Alternatively, I'd hold off on things like Up My Sleeve, at least until I know I'm going Shivs for sure, because they are more niche and not particularly helpful with, say, a skill-based poison build. Now, when it comes to gameplay, I'm going to use the Soulfish as a demonstration. Turn 1, it doesn't attack. So, I'm going to try to maximize my damage. At this time, I did not have Accuracy in the deck, and I didn't have Knife Trap. So my goal was to do damage, but also conserve my health as much as possible, because it was going to be a long fight. Spoiler alert, 11 turns of long. On turn 2, it does attack. So I played defensively to minimize the damage that I take. Now, jumping ahead a bit, on turn 4, this is a perfect example of why Hidden Daggers is so good. The Soulfish debuff can be quite problematic, especially if it stacks up, but here I'm able to safely discard both of them thanks to Survivor and Hidden Daggers. And if you're wondering why I retained a Shiv there, it's because I had Phantom Blades, so if I retain the Shiv, it does more damage next turn. And so from there, it was just rinse and repeat until the boss was dead. And by a cruel twist of fate, I was then forced to choose between Knife Trap and Blade of Ink. The good news about that, I had a Knife Trap. The bad news about that, I did not get a Blade of Ink nor an Accuracy for that entire run. But I did win, so I guess I can't complain too much. Now, in terms of counters to a Shiv deck, a couple come to mind. The first of which is enemies that limit the cards you play, especially skills. If anything is going to limit the number of skills you play, that's not good because most of your Shiv generators are skills. And if anything's going to limit the total number of cards you can play, say the Knowledge Demon, also the Queen. Well, I guess the Queen is limiting certain cards but not others, so she's not nearly as bad. Anything that limits the number of cards you can play, Not good, because Shiv decks tend to play a lot of cards. Also, the Entomancer comes to mind because if you're hitting him a whole bunch of times with a whole bunch of Shivs, well, guess what? You now have a deck full of dazes, and then you die because you draw nothing but dazes. And I forget the name of the enemy. They appear in Act 3, but there's an enemy that steals your strength and your dexterity. I found this to be particularly dangerous on a Shiv build as well, because Shivs don't do that much base damage. So if you lose 4 strength, guess what? Your Shivs don't do very much damage, or in some cases, do no damage at all. And with that, the rest of the run was super smooth. My deck ended up being relatively medium in size at about 25 cards. I got goopy on my defend, so basically what I'd do is I'd just play one defend, I'd get a whole bunch of block, and then I'd lose it, which thinned out my deck, allowing me to play more of my Shiv generators. And then I got to test subject C16 with a bunch of cloak and daggers and a bunch of hidden daggers, and I proceeded to kill it twice before drawing my knife trap at a time where I could actually do damage. But then, third phase, I've played a ton of Shivs so far. I've gone through the first and the second health bar just with Shivs, so played a ton of them. I draw a knife trap. The boss has intangible. Luckily, I had a thinking ahead in my deck, which I must have been thinking ahead when I added it, because I used it to put the knife trap on top of my draw pile. In other words, I would draw it next turn when the boss no longer had intangible. And so, of course, after that, I just played out all of my Shivs, got as many of those into the exhaust pile as possible. The exhaust pile was 56 total cards. And then what was there to do? Well, neutralize the boss, and then knife trap it into oblivion with my 49 Shivs. Yeah, turns out Infinite Knife Works, pretty good build. And so that's about it for my Shivs build in Slay the Spire 2. Again, I'm not saying this is the only way to build Shivs. It might not even be the best way to build Shivs, but this is the way that's gotten me several wins so far. With that said, I think I'm going to be making a couple more of these build videos for Slay the Spire 2. Not entirely sure which builds, characters, or archetypes I'm going to be covering, so if you have any suggestions, let me know. And then, get subscribed, that way you don't miss the upload. I'm also thinking for the next one, instead of doing the short gameplay tips and tricks at the end, I might just do a full run so that you can see me play, make all the decisions, and also so you can see all the misplays, I guess. And so that, thank you very much for watching to the end. Don't forget to leave a like on the video, and I'll see you in the next one.